the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Worldview Media Podcast. My name is Gordon Runyon.
Hello, Gordon Runyon.
And this is my co-host Joyce.
Joyce Runyon.
Joyce Runyon. Hello.
Hello.
And we are here to talk about worldview and entertainment media, and the particular media that we're looking at today is a reality TV show
Entitled,
the title of the show is The Curse of Oak Island.
Dun Dun Dun.
And I believe it's a History Channel thing is where that comes on. The Curse of Oak Island.
Yeah. I think it's also the History Channel.
Okay.
It's kind of like a documentary sort of
program. It's a reality show.
Well, yeah, but they're on a quest.
Right.
It's not just like people living together in a house or,
No, well, the story is that there's an island off the coast of, what is it, British Columbia?
I thought it was Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia, that's right. It's called Oak Island, and the story goes that way back in the 60s, an article appeared about this place, Oak Island, in Reader's Digest. And what it did was it collated some legends about the island that had persisted for a couple hundred years.
Mm-hmm.
And the legends were that the Knights Templar had buried treasure on Oak Island, and that there had also been like pirates who buried treasure on Oak Island. I don't know why everybody buried their treasure on Oak Island.
Yeah, I know. It's really out of the way if you look at the map.
Why they all chose that place to bury the treasure. So it's a little tiny island. It looks like probably, a mile across or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you that. I wouldn't guess.
And so anyway, it turns out that there really is a lot of historical mythology, legends, some documentation that leads a lot of people to believe that Oak Island really has been the scene of a lot of folks burying treasure. And when I say a lot of folks believe that, that includes apparently Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who spent time before he was the president, spent time
on the island.
Yeah, looking for buried treasure on Oak Island. Now, the legend that I find fascinating, I think it's the major one, is that the Knights Templar, whose main job was to protect Jerusalem from the Muslim hordes way back during the time of the Crusades, that they rescued religious artifacts from Jerusalem and took them away from there so they wouldn't fall into the hands of the Muslims. And apparently this could include all of the items from the temple, including like the Ark of the Covenant and the menorah, the original menorah, and some of the other temple furniture and stuff like that. And so the big legend is that somewhere underneath Oak Island, hidden in a series of tunnels and man-made caves and kind of a maze under the island, that if you know how to find it, you'll find all this vast treasure. And like I say, it's inspired people for hundreds of years to go there and dig around. So on this show, The Curse of Oak Island, it follows Rick and Marty Lagina, who are apparently, I don't know what their job is or what they're apparently business owners and in Nova Scotia, and they've got some money, and so they purchased a large portion of Oak Island at least, and have been there for several years and doing what they can to investigate and look for buried treasure there on Oak Island. And so in the middle of what they've been doing in this season is, wow, they've got this huge amount of industrial equipment, and they're drilling these 40-inch wide holes that go down a couple 100 feet.
Yeah.
And they find caves and or recesses, or I don't even, compartments that far under the ground, and the issue is that when they find a tunnel or whatever, when tunnels have been found in the past, there's seawater that floods into them and stuff like that, and the theory is that there was a booby trap that was set off that allowed seawater to come in and flood everything.
Well, and then another thing that's happened is that people in the past who've gone and tried to find it have just kind of they ripped up the island.
Some of them haven't been very careful.
And so where things had been, it's really not there anymore. And so there's a lot of, they try to do this conservatively as well. So they want to find what's underneath the land without just, blowing it all up.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to damage whatever they do happen to find. So they're very conservative in what they do and how they do that. And I think that's really wise of them, even though it can be very frustrating.
Yeah, because it moves really slow.
Yes.
Now, some of the things that I find intriguing about the show and aggravating too is that they really have, over the course of years, they have documentation and photos, and they'll show you the items and stuff. They really have found some things like coins 100 years old, or no more than that, a couple 100 years old.
Yeah.
Or even from the 17th century. They found, just this season, they found about half a dozen gold coins that were British in origin, but from like the 1600s.
Yeah.
And so they really do find stuff like that. And it's enough stuff to make you think something weird really has gone on that island in the past.
Well, and there's just been so many crazy theorists, too, that, the two islands were separate islands, and they were man-made, built together to make the one island, and that there's really a big ship in the swamp, and, that the swamp is man-made, and, that these elaborate tunnels were built way long time ago.
Right.
With, over 100 feet under the ground.
Yeah.
And that's incredible to think.
And built in the Middle Ages by the original stonemasons and stuff.
So it's kind of incredible to think.
But there's just enough that they find that makes you think, man, there really is something weird going on down there. And it's aggravating because of how slowly everything really does move.
Well, another factor with the show is that since it is so far north, they really have a limited time that they can actually pursue this. So
winter comes around and they have to shut everything down.
Yeah, and they have to go back to work and make more money to come back in the spring.
Right. The reason it's called the Curse of Oak Island is, I don't know where it came from, but there's this idea that the treasure won't be found until 7 people lose their lives in search of the treasure, and 6 of the treasure hunters throughout the last several hundred years have in fact died in the process. But then it occurs to me that here, just this last season, one of the guys that devoted his whole life to being on Oak Island and searching for the treasure, he finally died in the middle of his search. It just was, he died of old age,
Yeah. Well, he wasn't really.
It wasn't a tragic death or anything. But
yeah. Well, and then everything with where they're looking is that it's all underground and underwater, and so anytime they actually breach something where they can go in and look, you've got all this silt, you've got bad visibility, you've got divers that can only be down so long, and so it's really slow.
It's really slow. Well, the thing that's aggravating about it is, and especially in the first couple of seasons, the aggravating thing was how it seemed like a third of every episode was recapping what they had done previously.
Yeah.
And the same kind of graphics used over and over again, and they still kind of do that. I think they've gotten a little bit better about not completely retelling all the same stories. But
Yeah.
I do enjoy the show just because it's intriguing, but there are times when I think instead of having a full season, what they really need to do is just have like a 2-hour special event that comes on and just go through everything that they really do find, because it feels a lot like they're just stretching this out to make a full season of shows sometimes.
I don't know if I'd agree with you on that. I
Really?
think it would even, I think it'd be longer than a 2-hour special if you were to do something like that. And then I think that time delay that, that it takes this long to get to find anything, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for years and aren't really much. They get closer, but it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 step forward, 1 step back. And so you have a lot of, it looks like, aha, we finally made it and we'll find something. And then it's like, oh, well, no, that wasn't what we thought it was. And so
Right.
I think that just kind of plays in with the episodes that, okay, here we go again. And, I think that's how they go into every season themselves, that, okay, here we go again.
Right.
Maybe this time we'll find something. And this upcoming episode looks like it could be interesting. So I'm kind of looking to see what's clogging the pipes on this one.
Yeah, I think this podcast will air after that episode that you're talking about comes on, so we'll see. So one of the boreholes that they've drilled it's called 10X. That I'm not sure how it got that, but that's the name of it, 10X. And the guy that originally drilled out the hole, he's in his close to 80s now.
He's an elderly gentleman.
And he drilled it back in the 60s and has been searching for the treasure the whole time. And he is adamant. He's one of 2 men that's ever dived to the bottom of 10X. He's adamant that he found at the bottom there a wooden chest, and he saw like a pickaxe and the corpse of a dead body down there. I mean, he's adamant about it, and he's got some grainy photographs and stuff, and he does have a few little trinket items that he brought up from the bottom of 10X, and man-made little items and pieces of worked metal and stuff like that. And so now they've found a way to just kind of, through air pressure, they can pump stuff up from the bottom of 10X and
see what comes up with it.
Yeah, and so if they find something like a human bone or something like that, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe it kind of looked like maybe that's what they were going to do, but
looked like something. They found something.
But see, every episode's like that. It looks like maybe this is the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really haven't been watching as long as you have. I mean,
Right.
You've been like from the very beginning.
No, I didn't catch it at the beginning, but I did go back and watch things just because I do see it as a big giant puzzle, and there's a lot of information, and I think a lot of it is obviously false information. And it's kind of caused me to be curious about the Knights Templar. I mean, I've heard about them, and they're involved in a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff. And so I've gone back and read books on Oak Island and stuff like that, and the Templars, and I feel like I could probably go find the treasure myself, but I don't have the resources to do it. But
maybe you should
they wouldn't
contact
have me.
the brothers and say, I've got a theory.
They wouldn't have me. And anyway, there are some features of the show that are irritating. Like they dig out a piece of wood that looks like it was worked by human tools on this wood, and the announcer, there's a guy that does the voiceover, and everything they find, he'll say, "A block of wood? Could this be?" Yeah, or a 300-year-old nail? Could this be a thing? And it's kind of melodramatic a lot of the time. But anyway, there are some kind of funny worldview questions to ask about it, and we will get to that after our little break here, so hang on with us and we'll be right back.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ, our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
And we're back. We're looking at the History Channel original series, a reality show called The Curse of Oak Island, following the adventures of Rick and Marty Lagina and their business partners.
Excuse me.
As they search for the legendary treasure buried somewhere under Oak Island. Is it the Ark of the Covenant?
No.
The menorah from Solomon's Temple?
No.
Is it Captain Kidd's treasure?
That it might be.
Yeah, that it might be. Is it the original manuscripts of Shakespeare's plays? That's another theory.
Yeah, that was one of the latest ones. Who wrote it? It wasn't even Shakespeare. Somebody else was using him as a pen name or something.
I think they were saying Francis Bacon.
Yeah,
is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Incredible? I don't know.
I don't think they took that theory too seriously. All right, so there are some interesting worldview questions to talk about, and we, here on this program, we like to use the 5-point covenant model that we find throughout the scripture as a kind of grid for analyzing the things that we see. And the first point of the biblical covenant is transcendence. And by transcendence, in the Bible, transcendence is about the God who is the creator and redeemer and revealer of truth and the ultimate lawgiver. And in the media that we watch, there's always some kind of idea presented about transcendence, even if it's that there is no transcendence. You know, every piece of media is going to preach something about that. And so we like to ask, in this media that we're talking about, what is the transcendence that's pointed to or revealed? And in The Curse of Oak Island, there's not a lot of God talk going on there, and so from a worldview standpoint, I don't think they ever get much beyond kind of a pragmatic sort of naturalism. I think they try to approach their quest, their treasure hunt, in some kind of scientific way in terms of gathering evidence and forming hypothesis and doing what they can to either prove or disprove. And but science, as has been pointed out, science is not a thing; it's just a method. And the method itself, the scientific method, kind of depends on the Christian worldview being correct. Uniformity of nature, the existence of laws of logic, the reliability of observation and stuff like that. A lot of scientists use the scientific method without, of course, buying into the Christian worldview, but based on atheism, there's really no reason to trust the scientific method. And so in this show, they do try to be scientific, and that's about the closest we come to pointing toward any kind of transcendence. However, we've also kind of figured that one of the ways we know who is transcendent in your worldview is by asking the question, who is the ultimate lawgiver? What is the ultimate law? And that will point to the transcendent power. And it kind of seems to me in the Curse of Oak Island that there's an unspoken rule that seems to guide and govern everything. And the rule is almost like a Walt Disney thing about you've always got to follow your heart, or that there's an inherent good in pursuing your dream or something, like, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
It's kind of a background thing that, I mean, they don't say that, they don't talk like that or anything, but especially the Lagina brothers who are in charge of the quest, and they're the ones funding the quest with their own money, and it's a lot of money, it's millions of dollars. And they're confronted with failure most of the time. Very few things that they could call successes. And why do they continue to press on?
Because it's not definite. I don't think either one of them are satisfied by the answers that they've gotten so far, because nothing has been conclusive. They've had different people come in and, well, this is this, and then, oh no, that's not that, but then we have this, and so I can kind of see what you're saying with, follow your heart type of stuff, but I just think that they're not, it's not about really following your heart. It's still looking for evidence.
Well, it's a dogged determination
that in spite of all,
that they're going to find the answers that they seek. And
well, they are looking for answers, and I think they would even be satisfied with
a no answer.
Yeah, they just want an answer.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard on this show to really say yes or no. What do they think about God?
Yeah.
Who is God to them, and how do they approach that? And I think there's another reality show I'm thinking of with people that are doing homes, where I do know what they think, but I don't know if that's necessarily in their series.
Not explicit about it.
Yeah, and so and I think that's intentional on the part of the
network.
Yeah, that they don't want that in there. And so even if it is there,
they're not going to show it.
Yeah, they're not going to promote that. You see values in other ways, with how they interact with their clients, how they interact with their children, how they interact with people around them, but it's not a blatant thing. And in the same way, I think on Oak Island that they're concerned with the people that they're working with the core group that's doing the funding. They want to respect this older gentleman and the work that he's done. And even with this last episode, they were like, okay, we've got two things going. We can only do one of them.
Yeah. So
we got to pick. And they had this guy in, and he's not contributing money to this thing. He's just there as a resource to say, well, this is what happened, and then this over here, and he said, you gotta do this.
Yeah. And
it's where he went in and where he was looking for stuff, and so they do.
Right. They kind of made their choice based on trying to respect him and the work that he had done.
And just in the way that they're approaching all this thing, that they're wanting to be careful, that they're wanting to be conservative about it. I don't see a lot of developers or people pursuing treasure, which other people on the island have not done. And so it's not just about power. It's not just about having the ability to do something. And so we are going to, but it seems like there's a lot of care involved with how they're doing it and approaching it.
It's a little bit of a self-restraint that they show sometimes.
Well, and there's conflict between the two brothers. They don't always agree.
Yeah.
And even the younger brother says, I don't agree, but if that's what you want to do, then this is what we'll do.
Right.
And so there is a lot of that. And it's just a respectful thing. So I don't know a lot of people who are respectful in that way without realizing who other people are and why should we respect anybody.
Yeah. Well, like you say, if they do mention God or talk about faith or anything, the network has carefully scrubbed that out, so it's just not there. And so what we can discern is just what we see. And yeah, I think you're right. There are some hopeful signs there in terms of how they approach their business and stuff like that. Yeah.
And it's a hard thing because the way they do that, I mean, there's other reality shows that you're like, oh yeah, I can tell what these guys think about God. I can tell what they think about the law and the Bible and what's going on there. But even when these divers have been down in the water for an hour and they come up and, they want to know, well, what'd you find? What's going on? And it's still like, you know what? You're cold. You go get yourself squared away and get out of the wetsuit and warm up, and then we'll talk about this after a while. And
yeah, I think what you're pointing to is that they do kind of demonstrate over and over again a belief that the people that they know and work with and care about are really more important than whatever quest that they're on.
Well, even the crazy people that come on with different theories, they're
still
never,
respectful.
they're not like, oh, you're a whack nut. There's no way, which I might be tempted to say to myself and say, oh, we can't even air this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously the brothers have kind of a code of honor or something, and like we say, it's not explicit where that comes from, or I haven't noticed if it is. And in the absence of anything explicit, my guess is that they are not believers and that they're naturalists out there, but still motivated by something more than just quest for power. And there's something that allows them to overcome a lot of constant frustration, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Okay, so lacking the ability to say with any definite surety what that transcendence is in the show, it's hard to talk then about point 2 and representation and who represents that transcendent power. I guess whatever that is, the Leginas represent it. It's their beliefs that are propelling everything.
Kind of driving everything.
They are the visible leaders of what's going on, and they're the ones calling the shots. However, then we get to point 3 of the covenant, which is about ethics, what you shall do and shall not do in this arrangement that we're in. And I think there are ethical questions that they do bounce off each other a lot. And we've mentioned it before, just how much, one of them is just practical. How much money are you going to dump into investigating this hole over here or this swamp over here?
Yeah, draining a swamp.
Yeah. They've drained the swamp completely on the theory that it may be man-made and that it may be they're hiding something beneath it, and that's not a cheap enterprise, especially when you're dealing with
EPA.
the Canadian or
all the zoning and restrictions and
Yeah.
historical preservation and
Yeah, so it's not a cheap enterprise, and so the ethical question then becomes, I think it's interesting as a Christian to ask the question, could a Christian be involved in what they're doing in Oak Island and pour money into that? What do you think?
well, I think they have a network also helping to support their endeavors.
Yeah, they're being paid by the History Channel.
And so I think that probably helps significantly. A quest for truth, I don't know.
Yeah, it seemed to me, if all you're doing is you're trying to have your name associated with finding the Ark of the Covenant or whatever it is that they think they're going to find, it almost seems to me the thought that they might come across a treasure chest that pirates left behind. What are the chances that they get to keep that treasure? I think with the regulations being the way they are, I don't think the chances are very good there,
Yeah, I don't know how that would work, actually.
Right, and so it doesn't seem right to me that it would bother my conscience as a Christian man to just pour tons of treasure into finding treasure in the hope that I get paid back more than what I put in or something like that. But then I think, if, like you suggested, if they're seriously hoping that they might really make a super important historical discovery, like an archaeologist is hoping to do, or something like that, if they're on a quest for truth, that kind of puts things in a little bit of a different light for me. How much money would a creation scientist be willing to pour into, investigating whether or not they've really found Noah's Ark or something like that? And money has been poured into that in the past.
And why it's not going on presently is just because of government
right
issues. So,
well, I'm reminded of it reminds me a little bit of Christ's parable about the man who finds a treasure in a field and he hides it and then goes and sells everything he has and buys the field. And I think that's what we see the Laginas doing. They're based on a treasure. It's like they believe there's a treasure there. They haven't seen it. They haven't got what could be called super hard evidence for it.
Yeah.
But just something is in their mind and they believe it's there, and they're willing to dump millions of dollars worth of treasure into trying to find this treasure. And so, and I'm not saying that's a parallel for the kingdom of God or anything. I'm just saying that Jesus knew what he was talking about, that men really will do this, that they'll buy the whole field for the sake of getting a crack at that treasure that's in the midst of it or something. And that's what they're doing. But, and everything the Bible has to say about treasure comes to mind, that where your heart is there, or where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And you can see their treasure is somewhere buried under the island, and they don't even know.
The story with them goes too that this has been something that they have been thinking about since they were
kids,
and so they have the resources to do this, and so they're investigating it, and it's been a long process, because I don't think maybe they were putting as much into this at the beginning as they are now, but I think maybe some of that has to do with it's a network program now, and the younger brother works in Michigan doing stuff. It's a limited time where they work actually on the island where they can do things. And so, I don't know, is it all consuming? I don't know that.
Well, and just from a kind of a Christian libertarian point of view, they've made all their money legally by all accounts as private businessmen, and if they want to dump their treasure in the search for,
they should be able to do what they want with their
right,
money.
scientific discovery, or whether
Yeah.
it's for greed or just to satisfy a historical puzzle. At some point, you got to say, well, that's kind of between them and God, what they do with their resources.
Yeah.
And the truth is, they're employing people,
Yeah.
even in their quest for treasure that may not wind up being there. There are people who are feeding their families because of it and stuff like that. So, kind of go back to Bastiat's insight that all the money in an economy gets spent, no matter who spends it or what they spend it on. It all gets spent, and we may think that what they're pouring money into is a foolhardy quest or something, or they're tilting at windmills or something, but
but they should be able to do what they want to with
yeah, it's their money, and
Yeah.
and they're not harming anybody or anything,
Yeah.
and they're actually employing people. So, frankly, I hope they do find something that validates what they've been doing. Like you've said, they seem like honorable guys, and they're obviously kind of stubborn,
Yeah.
and in a good way. They're successful businessmen because they obviously know how to set goals and work hard and be single-minded in their focus and stuff like that. So, whether the story that they're pursuing may be foolish, but they're displaying some admirable qualities along the way.
Yeah.
All right. And so, you have any other ethical issue?
I don't think so. I think there's been interesting people crop up along through the series, coming in and trying to sway them one way or another, and yet they listen to everything that comes through, and they discuss it and talk about it. And I don't know, I just think it's really interesting the way they kind of interact with each other and kind of figure things out as they're going along.
Yeah, there was an interesting thing they did in terms of morality, that they were visited by an older woman, must have been in her 80s.
Yeah, I think it was her dad.
Her dad had been there, and they had both lost their lives searching for treasure there when she was a little kid. And the Laginas brought her back to the island, and they gave her a tour and explained what they were doing to continue the search. But they also set up a memorial stone with the names of her family members on there, and just kind of as a way of honoring them, and they brought her there and made sure she saw it, and she was very touched, and obviously thought it was a very meaningful thing, and that was a gesture they didn't have to make, and it just kind of seems like that's the type of guy that they both are.
Well, and then even in the show there were two older gentlemen, the one that just passed away and the one that's still there. It's Blankenship, and was it Nolan?
Yeah, Nolan and Blankenship.
And Nolan recently passed away, but before he passed away, they kind of established a truce between these two guys, and they hadn't been on friendly terms.
Right, there was a rivalry there, and the Lagina brothers brokered a peace and brought reconciliation between two sides that had kind of been at odds.
And through doing that, then all this information was also available, because they didn't have any insight as to what this guy knew, and he wasn't forthcoming, and so it was a good thing for everybody that this happened. But so there's been some interesting things happen that aren't just related specifically to we're going to see what's underneath this island.
Yeah, that's right. I'd kind of forgotten about that. They did kind of broker that reconciliation and thought it was an important thing to do, not just because of how they thought it might help their search. I think it will wind up helping them, but I think they just felt like that was the right move to make, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, so point 4 of the covenant is sanctions, and it begins to talk about rewards. And if you obey the structure of what we're doing here, how will you be rewarded? And that's kind of what we're all waiting to see.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're being rewarded.
It comes in drips and drabs.
Yeah.
You know, they do see some things, and they do uncover some things that make me kind of freak out and say, wow, that's something.
That's something, yeah. That's real, man. Yeah.
And then they spend lots of money looking somewhere else, and it just turns out to be a big nothing. And
Yeah.
so.
Well, it's just, you know, like when they drained the swamp, and before they drained it, they found a big, huge, long, long, long piece of wood that was old. And how is that in a swamp, you know? And so
Yeah.
they just have all of these things that crop up, and you're like, well, what could this mean?
Right.
Why am I finding this here? And so it's really crazy, the stuff that they find on this
Right.
island, and in the different places they find it, and you're just like, well, that can't just be traffic.
Right. Carved stones out in the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere, and that
Things
are
set
buried
up,
just
yeah.
a little bit. And, yeah. It's weird. Something weird has gone on there, and I'm still convinced that's true, even though.
Yeah, we don't know what exactly. Yeah, so.
Well, you just don't find those hundreds of years old gold coins out there, or whatever, copper coins. Is that what they found? But
Yeah.
man, that means there were really people there, you know. So it's interesting. That's what we're all waiting for, is to see how that goes. And then for succession, I guess that's the question too. Point 5 of the covenant is succession, or looking toward the future of this arrangement. And that's kind of the big issue, because this arrangement will be over and done if they find something, you know, if they find whatever the big thing is. When they answer all the questions, then we're done. But I guess we're just dreading, maybe this just goes on, you know.
How long can it go?
How long will they keep searching? But it does seem like that they have the resolve, and they've apparently got a business that's still operating and still making enough money to supply them with the means to search. So seems to me, as long as their resolve holds out, they can keep it going. Doesn't always make for real exciting television, but because, you know, it's a real thing, and sometimes big news doesn't come on a weekly basis or something like that.
But then again, like I said, you know, that's just reflective of what they're going through too. That here we're gonna get something, and you know, no, we didn't get nothing. So
well, I think it's interesting, and I think it's inspiring. You know, like I said, I read history books that I wouldn't have read otherwise. I know a lot more about the Knights Templar than I would have, and I'm not quite sure how that helps anybody, but
it helps you.
So that's it. You like the show? Would you recommend people get into it, or?
Yeah, I like the show. I think the guys are pretty fun. They're real people. One of them is really real. And I don't know, he had some type of injury.
One of the supporting cast guys.
Yeah. And so he's to the point, straightforward, minces no words.
Yeah, there are some characters on the show. That's true.
Speaks his mind.
Well, I guess I'd recommend it if you're intrigued by puzzles.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I never watched the series Lost when it came on. And as soon as I heard people talking about what it was, I knew, I can't watch any of it, you know. Because what if I get intrigued by it and I don't have all the pieces to the puzzle and all that. And I'm just saying, watch if you're okay with kind
Slow
of buckling in
moving,
for the ride in terms of trying to solve the puzzle and all that. I find it intriguing. I think it's kind of fun.
Well, it's interesting and to see the different innovative ways they look at how can we see what's underneath here and how
Right.
can we do this in a way that's responsible and
Yeah, it's a lot of exercises in practical problem solving and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, pretty imaginative sometimes. All right. I guess we've done about all the damage we can do here.
so a reality show, kind of a
Our
different
first
way to look
reality
at.
show.
at
I've got two
media.
more in mind for us to look at that I think have worldview stuff going on in them.
We'll have to see.
Well, I won't even be that mysterious about it. There's another reality show that's called Married by Mom and Dad,
Oh, yeah.
which presents a lot of challenges to the way people think about this and that. So Married by Mom and Dad, and then you mentioned the show Fixer Upper with the Gaineses, Chip and Joanna, and I think there's maybe some stuff worth talking about there. We might do both of those at one time in a show or something.
That could get a little confusing.
Yeah, that's true. Married by Mom and Dad has a lot to talk about, I think.
Yeah,
All right.
there's a lot.
Right. Okay, so that's where we are. Again, we want to encourage you to find us on Facebook. And if you've got suggestions and just for whatever you might like to see.
And
us
we do
review.
have a suggestion that we're trying to figure out how we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's true. We've got a couple of those.
So don't despair.
But Netflix is your friend if you're going to make suggestions. If it's on Netflix, we'll generally be able to give it a shot. All right. So, as always, just God bless you. And the reason we're doing this isn't just because we're freaks for entertainment or stuff like that, but
I don't know.
but because we think it's important that the Word of God be applied to every area of life, including arts and entertainment, and that Christian people are preaching something all the time. Really, everybody is preaching something all the time in everything that they do. And so we want to train ourselves to be able to spot that and figure out what it looks like when you're preaching this or that. And so that's what we're here for, to work on disciplining our senses and being able to spot good and evil in a biblical fashion.
To be able to find what is real treasure.
Finding the real treasure. Bringing it home, bringing the metaphor full circle.
Thanks.
You're my treasure, baby.
You see what I live with?
All right. So we'll see y'all next week. God bless you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.